Hi, my name is Karen, and I'm an American lay student of Ajahn Suchat, or Pra Ajahn Suchat Abhijato, who has given me the very special honor of being asked by him to record this book for you. This book was written by Pra Ajahn Suchat's own teacher, the Venerable Acariya Mun Nanasampanno, and is a spiritual biography written by him about his teacher, the Venerable Acariya Mun Biography. The title of the book is Venerable Acariya Mun Biography, a spiritual biography by Acariya Mun Nanasampanno, and it was published in 2005, translated into English by Bhikkhu Dick Silaratano. If you would like to learn how to download or get a hard copy of this book, or a list of which pages or chapters are read on each separate recording, please listen to the beginning of the first recording of this book. This book, in any form, is to be given away for free. Any ads you may see or hear in this recording have been put there by the platform you are using to listen or view with, for its own revenue, in exchange for letting us use their platform for free. Please forgive me for any mispronunciations of names, places, or words, as I'm still learning how to pronounce Thai and Pali, and for any background noises, as I'm just making these recordings in my apartment with an unruly dog and in the middle of a city. We're resuming today on page 79. We are in chapter 2, starting a new subsection today titled Local Customs and Beliefs. Earlier, before Acariya Mun and Acariya Sao began wandering through the region to enlighten people about the nature of moral virtue and to explain the consequences of their actions and beliefs, the worship of spirits and ghosts had become endemic in the Northeast and a common aspect of everyday village life. Whether it was planting the rice, putting in a garden, building a house, or making a shed, an auspicious day, month, and year had to be determined for the start of every endeavor. Before any type of work could begin, propitiatory offerings were routinely made to placate the local spirits. Should those ritual offerings be neglected, then the least untoward thing, a common cold or a sneeze, was attributed to incurring the disfavor of the spirits. A local spirit doctor was then called in to divine the cause and pacify the offended spirit. Doctors in those days were much smarter than they are today. They unhesitantly declared that this spirit or that ghost had been wronged, claiming that a certain offering or sacrifice would cure everything. Even if the supplicant was hacking and sneezing long after offering the prescribed oblation, it made no difference. Back then, if the doctor declared you cured, you were, and you felt relieved despite the symptoms. This is the reason I can so boldly assert that both the doctors and the patients of that era were very smart. Whatever the doctor declared was final, and the patient accepted it without reservation. It was unnecessary to search for medical cures, since the spirit doctor and his ghosts could cure everything. Later, when Acariya Mun and Acariya Sao passed through these areas, reasoning with local inhabitants and explaining the principles of truth, their preoccupation with the power of spirits and the agency of spirit doctors gradually waned. Today, it has virtually disappeared. Even many of the spirit doctors themselves began taking refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha in place of the various spirits and ghosts they had been worshiping. Nowadays, hardly anyone engages in such occult practices. Traveling from village to village in the Northeast today, we no longer have to tread our way through offerings laid out for the spirits as we did in the past. Except for the odd group here or there, spirit worship is no longer an issue in people's lives. It's truly a blessing for this region that people no longer have to live their whole lives clinging to these beliefs. The people of the Northeast have long since transferred their faith and allegiance to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, thanks largely to the compassionate efforts of Acariya Mun and Acariya Sao, to whom we all owe an immense debt of gratitude. During his time in the region, Acariya Mun taught the local people, applying all his strength and ability to render them as decent human beings. He passed through some villages where the local wise men asked him questions. They asked questions such as, do ghosts really exist? Where do human beings come from? What is it that causes sexual attraction between men and women, since they've never been taught this? Why are male and female animals of the same species attracted to one another? From where did humans and animals learn this mutual attraction? Though I can't recall all the questions he was asked, these I do remember. I accept blame for any inaccuracies in what is recorded here, as my memory has always been somewhat faulty. Even recalling my own words and other personal matters, I cannot avoid making mistakes. So my recollection of Acariya Mun's stories is bound to be incomplete. To the question, do ghosts really exist? Acariya Mun's reply was, if something truly exists in the world, whether a spirit or anything else, it simply exists as it is. Its existence does not depend on the belief or disbelief of anyone. People may say that something exists or doesn't exist, but whether that thing actually exists or not is dependent entirely on its own nature. Its state does not alter according to what people imagine it to be. The same principle applies to ghosts, which people everywhere are skeptical about. In reality, those ghosts that frighten and torment people are actually creations of their own minds. They've come to believe that here and there dwell ghosts that will harm them. This in turn causes fear and discomfort to arise in them. Ordinarily, if a person doesn't mentally conjure up the idea of ghosts, he doesn't suffer from a fear of them. In a majority of cases, ghosts are just mental images created by those who tend to be afraid of them. As to whether there really are such things as ghosts in the world, even if I were to say that they do exist, there is still not enough proof to make skeptics into believers, since people have a natural tendency to deny the truth. Even when a thief is caught red-handed with stolen articles, he will often refuse to admit the truth. More than that, he'll fabricate an alibi to get himself off the hook and deny any wrongdoing. He may be forced to accept punishment due to the weight of the evidence against him, but he will still continue to protest his innocence. When he is imprisoned and someone asks him what he did wrong to deserve that punishment, he will quickly answer that he was accused of stealing, but insist that he never did it. It is rare for such a person to own up to the truth. Generally speaking, people everywhere have much the same attitude. To the question, where do human beings come from? Acariya Mun's reply was, all human beings have a mother and father who gave birth to them. Even you yourself were not born miraculously from a hollow tree. We all obviously have parents who gave birth to us and raised us, so this question is hardly an appropriate one. Were I to say that human beings are born of ignorance and craving, this would cause more confusion and misunderstanding than if I gave no answer at all. People have no knowledge whatsoever of what ignorance and craving are, although they are present there in everyone, except of course in the arahants. The trouble is, people are not interested enough to make the necessary effort for understanding these things, so that leaves the obvious answer. We are born of our parents. This then opens me up to criticism that I've answered too briefly. But it is hard to give a reply which goes to the truth of the matter when the one asking the question is not really much interested in the truth to begin with. The Lord Buddha taught that both people and animals are born of avijja paccaya sankhara samudayo hoti. The ceasing of birth, which is the cessation of all dukkha, stems from Avijaya, Dvewa, Asesa Viraga, Nirodha, Sankara, Nirodo Hoti. This condition is inherent within the heart of each and every person who has kilesas. Once the truth has been accepted, it becomes clear that it's just this which leads to birth as a human being or an animal until the world becomes so crowded one can hardly find a place to live. The primary cause is just this ignorance and insatiable craving. Though we haven't even died yet, we are already searching for a place to be born into where we can carry on living. An attitude of mind that leads human beings and animals all over the world to birth and constant suffering. Anyone wishing to know the truth should take a look at the chitta that's full of the kind of kilesas which are frantically looking to affirm birth and life at all times. That person will undoubtedly find what he's looking for without having to ask anyone else. Such questions merely display a level of ignorance that indicates the inquirer is still spiritually inadequate. The chitta tends to be the most unruly, conceited thing in the world. If no interest is taken in reining it in, we will never become aware of how really stubborn it is, and all our noble hopes and aspirations will come to nothing. What is it that causes the sexual attraction between men and women and animals of the same species, since they've never been taught this? Acariya Mun replied, Raga Tanha is not to be found in any book, nor is it learned in school from a teacher. Rather, Raga Tanha is a stubbornly shameless condition that arises and exists in the hearts of men and women, causing those who have this vulgar condition to come under its spell and become vulgar themselves without ever realizing what's happening. Raga Tanha makes no distinction between man, woman, or animal, nationality, social status, or age group. If it is strong, it can easily cause disaster in the world. If there is insufficient presence of mind to restrain it and keep it within acceptable limits, sexual craving will become like runaway floodwater, overflowing the banks of the heart and spreading out to flood towns and cities, leaving ruin everywhere in its wake. Such a condition has always been able to thrive within the hearts of all living beings precisely because it receives constant nourishment and support, things which give it the strength to assert its suffocating influence continuously, sowing havoc and causing misery throughout the world. We hear only about floods occurring in towns and cities and how they cause destruction to people and their belongings. No one is interested in noticing the flood of Raga Tanha engulfing the hearts of people who are quite content to let themselves and their belongings be ravaged by those surging floodwaters all year round. Consequently, no one understands the real reason for the ongoing deterioration of world affairs because each and every person is contributing to and encouraging this situation by failing to recognize that Raga Tanha is directly responsible for the worsening situation. If we do not focus our attention on the real cause, it will be impossible for us to find any genuine sense of contentment. The original question asked only about that aspect of Raga Tanha concerning the attraction between people, completely ignoring the destruction instigated by Raga Tanha through hatred and anger. But in his explanation, Acariya Mun touched on the full range of detrimental results stemming from Raga Tanha. He said that it is Raga Tanha which dictates the passionate urges of men, women, and all the animals, facilitating the pleasure they find in each other's company. This is a principle of nature. Nothing other than this gives rise to mutual affection and mutual animosity. When Raga Tanha uses its deceptive tricks for passionate ends, people fall in love. When it uses its deceptive tricks to bring forth hatred and anger, they inevitably hate, get angry, and harm each other. Should it wish to control people using love as a means, then people become so attracted to one another that there's no separating them. Should it wish those same people to fall under the influence of hatred and anger, then they'll feel an irresistible urge to do just that. Acariya Mun asked the lay people present, "Haven't you ever quarreled among yourselves? You husbands and wives who have been in love since before you were married? You asked me about it, but you should know a lot more about this matter than a monk does." To this they replied, "Yes, we've quarreled until we are sick of it and never want to again, but still we have another argument." Acariya Mun then continued, "You see, this is the very nature of the world. One moment there's affection, another moment there's friction, anger, and hatred. Even though you know it to be wrong, it's hard to correct. Have you ever seriously tried to correct this problem? If so, it shouldn't happen very often. Even a minimal effort should be enough to keep it under control. Otherwise, it's like eating 3 meals a day. In the morning you quarrel, in the afternoon you quarrel, and in the evening you quarrel, regularly around the clock. Some people even end up in divorce, allowing their children to become caught up in the conflagration as well. They are innocent, yet they too must bear the burden of that bad karma. Everyone is affected by this blazing fire. Friends and acquaintances keep their distance due to the shame of it all. Assuming both parties are interested in settling the issue, they should be aware that an argument is a bad thing. Stop it as soon as it starts, and make an effort to correct it at that point. The matter can then sort itself out so that in the future such problems don't recur. For instance, when anger or aversion arises, first think of the past you have shared together, and then think of the future you will share living together for the rest of your lives. Now compare this to the malice that's just arisen. That should be enough to lay the matter to rest. Mostly, people who go astray do so because they insist on having their own way, without considering whether they're right or wrong. They want to personally dominate everybody else in the family, something which just isn't possible to achieve. Such arrogance spreads and rages, singeing others until everyone is scarred. Even worse, they want to exert their influence over everyone else in the world, which is as impossible as trying to hold back the ocean with your hands. Such thoughts and actions should be strictly avoided. If you persist in them, they will bring your own downfall. People living together must adhere to and be guided by equitable standards of behavior when dealing with their husbands, wives, children, servants, or co-workers. This means interacting with them in a reasonable, harmonious way. Should others not accept the truth, it is they who are at fault for being so unreasonable, and it is they who will pay the price, not those who adhere firmly to guiding principles. Now we're going to go ahead and stop there today. We're at the bottom almost of page 84. We'll begin tomorrow resuming on page 84 in the very last paragraph. We are in the section titled Local Customs and Beliefs in Chapter 2. Until next time, with Metta. Bye-bye.